common that the bench goes, like, look, the idea is that if a police officer is going to testify and they're going to get on the stand and say it under oath, even if unless it's just a flat-out catch them in a lie, you got a video.
How do they do it all the time like
listen,
this?
It's because their version of the events are told in their police reports, when they may not be true. But what I'm saying is
they're not true. Defendant Jeff Michael in the courtroom. I mean, the poor guy stands up. He's like, okay. Like, because they lie about people that they're trying to prosecute. Am I wrong, Michael, in seeing it every
you're
stinking
right.
time?
My point is that it continues on. That's the winning. That's the win in their part. That's the hard. And what happens is that catching them in court is not enough to get the judge to rule in your favor.
Why doesn't the judge do anything?
I'll tell you why. But the point is, it doesn't matter. It's for the jury. That's where it comes. Like the case. The question is this. The question oftentimes for a jury is, even though we know the guy did it, the cop's still lying. What's the moral thing to do? You know what I mean? I remember there was an article in a bar journal where a lawyer said on a jury, and guy was a heroin addict. They knew he possessed it, but they knew the cop was lying. Like, what's the just thing to do? It was like an interesting, put aside beyond a reasonable doubt and prove the case, but it's like he had this dilemma because he saw the total, lack of compassion with the
Ethics?
Situation. Yes,
morality,
right? But he also knew that. So I mean, that's kind of the scenario that we find ourselves in here, and.
And what's the difference between Michigan and Colorado? Which article did you recently post on Facebook about a jury acquitting a woman with 60 pounds?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's
Colorado.
That's what I was getting at. The world, the community who has voted for this aren't the ones enforcing the law. They're the ones that will and should be the people that are, voting on whether it constitutes a crime or not. And I've always been of that opinion. If you can speak freely before a jury and be able to explain the medical defense, it's not going to be, it's a different scenario. And
if you're Michael Comorn or Jeff Frazier.
Well, the law, it's really interesting. I was talking about this last night with this other lawyer
seriously.
Who's miserable with the general practice of law. What I've just described is in all aspects. The police tell the story. You're taking them on by the pretext that you got to prove that they're lying. And if you don't, they win the case. And before the judges, they win. So you got to take it in front of a jury. But the medical...
Say that again. Say it again, please. When you go in the courtroom, you have to do what?
I don't know what I said.
You have to prove yourself innocent.
You have to prove?
You have to prove the cops are lying.
I'm saying if you... Listen.
Every time.
Every single time.
Every single time.
First of all, especially in narcotics cases.
It's crazy. It's rampant corruption because of drug prohibition, just like alcohol prohibition. Do you have this issue with murder trials?
Well, I was trying to explain that these particular cases are easier for prosecutors because the witnesses in these cases are all trained, right? They're the top brass.
They don't turn on each other. They have no CIs in the cop world.
And it's not like if it's an assault and battery case, you've got to bring the husband in. You got to subpoena him.
Well, they're not bringing that in.
I know, but what I'm saying, I'm thinking about other types of cases in the criminal justice system. The ones that win is when the witnesses show up. If they have problems getting a witness there, someone's afraid to testify. But these are the police officers that show up, and they make the case on their, police report, as is the case most of the time, all right? So when they go through this, and even if you undo it a little bit, it oftentimes doesn't dispel of the case and get it dismissed. However, I'm suggesting the medical marijuana defense is allowed in some instances, or should allow, for a version of the events through the eyes of the patient and through the eyes of the caregiver, so a jury can see it other than just a version of the police. And that's where the law was intended. And as you referenced the case in Colorado, that's the state of evolution. They're sick of it. And when the juries start ruling like that, not guilty, 30 pounds of marijuana, it means stop this nonsense,
Stop it.
But we're not even getting the chance to do that because of this new thing, which is you can't bring your medical marijuana defense before the jury. I was before the Court of Appeals on last Tuesday on a case. They issued some unpublished opinion where they were trying to preclude us from mentioning medical marijuana at this person's purported dispensary, where the first buy they turned them away because they didn't have a card. Should that not be part of the case? Yes, says the prosecutor. No, said the judges in the Court of Appeals. And the fact that they needed to get a CI with a card, they want to say is not part of this. It shouldn't be part of the case. They want everybody to lie. The Court of Appeals didn't agree with him on that either. But anyways, that's
in a lot of Michael's cases, he catches them lying so much that the prosecutor has to actually defend their own witnesses from themselves.
Let's not get too. Thank you, do I appreciate that. It's
He's right.
But oddly, as we talk about this kind of lying, and it's a strong word. We've pled it in our motions before as something to the effect of it's an ugly word, but there's no other way to say it. But perjury, that is. But it doesn't always rise to that level. It's written off. Judges allow for some, but in this particular case, Amanda, let's return to that specifically because we had some crazy things happen that were completely not the norm in most cases.
Can I just tell you that as far as assault, you mentioned assault, like in the courtroom, like how would the cops they wouldn't often get an opportunity to go into the courtroom and prosecute an assault case because we only have about a 27% arrest rate for assault statewide. Prostitution's 85, drugs are 80, murders 63.
But
rape is
but
15.
do you know what I mean? Like if it's
you're fighting in the courtroom all the time with weed.
And the witnesses that make the cases are the most professionally trained witnesses that exist.
That's where all the money is.
That exist
all the time, all the resources.
And that are going to make the case. Do you understand? Let me explain why. Because if it's a case that requires any lay person, anyone that's not a police officer, they don't get paid overtime for being there.
The scientists that you guys haul in?
Who are
the scientists that you guys like all the Michigan State Police like scientists that you make come in.
They're regulars in this charade. They get paid regularly and they get extra drive time. There's a cost that they already have built into the budget. I'm saying bring a civilian to come testify, in an armed robbery or it's a lot of effort getting them. They're just different cases. Who are the Dewey? What are you doing? Come on, just kidding. Go ahead. He's telling secrets in the hallway. All right. Jeff, talk to me. My point is here that the police investigations, the investigations of criminal cases that when you look on the witness list, it's Drug Task Force Officer ABCD, that means that these things are pretty true. When the exam or the trial where they have to produce witnesses, they're all going to be there, okay? They're all going to have testified before in a case. They're all going to have some expertise.
And you're right. They're the most trained. They're finely trained. They all say the same lies again and again.
They got reports. They know how to read the reports, refresh their memory. I'm just telling you, this is what makes the war on drugs so difficult or so, challenging and why it's successful in the perceived by the courts. The success is that, they've created a situation where you got to try the case.
It's massive.
You either got to try the case or you have a video in your back pocket.
It's massive. The Attorney General is prosecuting mothers and people for medical marijuana still today, right now, still today. How many of your cases involve the Attorney General, Michael?
Currently, we got like three or four left.
I mean, right now, I don't know, 3 or 4. Like, what does this mean? What is he doing?
Let's talk about
what is Schuette doing?
Well, what Schuette's doing is they have a specific department called the Marijuana Enforcement Department. Look it up online on his website. They recently hired 8 people in that department because most of the other state agencies are hiring right now because state budgets.
Because of all the money that's about to come in.
State budgets are what? That's the thing. Like expanding budgets, hiring more people. No, it's usually the opposite. But you're right. They got all this money from the $9 million that was shifted over for the enforcement and another $10 million.
I'm sorry, that $9 million shifted over to where from where?
Well, the original.
Oh, what does that mean?
They took $8 or $9 million out of the MMA license, you
become a patient or a caregiver in Michigan, you send in your fees.
That amount was sitting. They sent that over to Lara as part of the budget and then took another $10 million from the state budget to help fund the development of the MMAFLA. But here's good news, because I was complaining about the Fourth Amendment, and you were asking about the raids and whatnot, and I said that Amanda had left with her son in the vehicle from her house, and we litigated that case up in Ypsilanti. I mean, up in Washtenaw County Circuit Court, but started in the Ypsilanti. We had David Radoy and Denny Hayes with us as co-counsel and for the other alleged and accused. And we had a very courageous judge in the circuit court there. Josh worked in our courtroom, and Judge Klunke.
Carol Klunke.
Right. And she and here's the legal issue. It comes up quite a bit. When you know, the assumption is you know that someone is a quote-unquote known drug dealer, just for the facts of the case. And there's an arrest that takes place. The case was Ricky Brown is with a guy who's driving in a car. Ricky Brown's in a car driving the guy who's made 7 controlled buys, 7 controlled sales to agents. Now Ricky Brown's in the car. They're going to an 8th one. There's no doubt that this car is destined in law enforcement terms to sell drugs. And that's what these people were intending to do at the time. And when they seize the car, there's drugs in it, packaged for sale, and they take them into custody, and they take out Ricky Brown's wallet, and it's from that wallet that they learn that he lives at blah, blah, blah. And because of that and that alone and nothing else, they get a search warrant to go into the house. Now, this happens all the time. All the time. Okay? Sometimes they call it a record search warrant. A what? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which is not legal in Michigan. It's bizarre. Jeff, you should start getting crazy with me on this. But what happens is it's not a thing.
They make shit up. They make shit up all the time. This is
it's
that
illegal.
segment called "They Just Make Stuff Up."
So
it's not a statutory authority.
And I will say this, it was because the federal courts have struggled with this issue, and just assume the facts if they catch someone with what appears to be, or is perceived as being, illegal involving the selling drugs, to what extent does it go? What is required? And the courts have gone different ways. Now, in this case, there was nothing that they could rely on. They never even saw her take anything into the house, out of the house, go from one location that the first search warrant was to the second location. Nothing. They had no reason to think that there was anything going in the house other than she lived there. And
this is what they always do. They always raid your businesses and your home.
The amount of
slop
that is allowed in the search warrant process is an obscenity.
The joke is this: in their training and experience, is the catchphrase. They know that people of this ilk, drug dealers, known drug dealers, will insert information of wherever you want to get into. We know that drug dealers will store this and stuff at their house or whatever, and that's what it is. So, but without any other facts, this is what they ride. This is what they ride out. Now, courts have allowed this. I mean, I can tell you other cases they relied on it all the time, but this case, it's a 6th Circuit case. They kind of put an end to it as they go through this journey, and it was great because we were standing before the judge in the Circuit Court in Washtenaw, and she was kind of cross-examining the Attorney General at the time, saying like, yeah. As to Mr. Kimorn's point, what if someone's arrested in Ohio and they have what appears to be an amount of drugs that may be destined for delivery? Does that mean you can go into their house in Michigan? Or what if we're in Florida or California? Or what about, somewhere out of the country? Is that what it is? Or, without just because their driver's license or they know that they live there and have seen them go there and go in there? Doesn't there have to be some indicia of criminal activity beyond just what you think in your training experience? And the Attorney General responded, well, if it's in the affidavit and it's in their training experience, that should be enough, Your Honor. And she said, well, wouldn't they then just train you to say that? And he said, if it's in their training experience, Your Honor. Anyways, he had no answer for that. And they threw the case out. Am I making any sense? You guys look
yes,
all right.
You're totally making sense.
So
can I? It's 9:21. Can we talk about the raid at all?
Sure. Yeah.
And the forfafeture? Can we do that?
Were we not talking? I'm sorry. If I've been talking for the last 40 minutes,
it's beautiful. All of it. You're hitting all the points on the wall. All of them. What did they take when they raided you? First of all, were you home? Were you home when that happened, or
when we got pulled over? We were driving down Michigan Avenue, going off to the office, and they pulled us over.
Which is also I can't stop. That's also a constitutional violation. U.S. v. Bailey overruling a case of Mission Summers that says Just because you're executing a search warrant at a house, you can detain the individuals at the house for safety and so they don't destroy what you're looking for, and anyone that arrives there, detaining them.